Hey everybody, so in this series of videos I'm talking about 14 layers of strategy as applied to river flows in U. And in general on this channel I hope to empower you through strategy to advance at the piano with maximum efficiency, quality, and independence. And as I said in previous videos in this series, typically I'll talk about layering dozens or even hundreds of layers of strategy, mindset, tactics, whatever you want to call them, on top of each other in my teaching. But in this case I've just chosen 14 arbitrary layers. Could definitely be different ones that could be in a different order, one of like infinite ways to gradually layer many different concepts, ideas on top of each other to help your practicing. The general idea being that instead of doing isolated tips and tricks, we are combining many different independently powerful things together to help your playing exponentially more than just doing isolated things in a vacuum. So yeah, so far we've talked about separate hands, let's see, slow, observant into quality, going super small, idea of always having an overlapping note, writing all the fingering, spaced repetition, and the logical notation from my logical methodology. And today we're going to talk about adding in reverse. And this is a very big thing for me. Let's see if we can choose black. So adding in reverse, one of the first videos I uploaded, I think, to YouTube in terms of like my talking videos. And yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, it's basically this idea of instead of playing from the beginning and then messing up at the end and playing from the beginning and then messing up at the end over and over and over again until you eventually get it, we want to be smarter than that and actually just go right to the end. And yeah, it's basically akin to if you have a stack of 50 flashcards and the first 30 are good and then the last 20 are weaker, you would normally just review the last 20 flashcards. But instead, like, it's the equivalent of just going right back to the top of the stack of 50 flashcards again and going through the first 30. That's how nonsensical things are. But when people practice music, they literally do the equivalent of this. They will play a line, and I'll just show you right here with river flows in U. So let's see here. So they will play, let's say they start from the beginning of this measure. They want to get to the end of the, let's say that it's, you know, a not very advanced student. So even playing this one measure set, which is just one measure plus the following note, like that might be difficult for them, right? So they play the beginning right, then they play the ending wrong. Then they try it again, play the beginning correct again, and then they play the ending incorrectly again. And that's just repeats over and over again. Maybe they get a little further. And, you know, but then they mess up the end. So then they think, oh, well, I better try that again. It's mass practice. It's like the blue will gradually, you know, go against, you know, the grain of this red. And eventually, finally, the blue will make it all the way through to the end, like to this point. Even if they actually understood the overlapping note concept and some of those other ideas that I mentioned. But the problem is that this blue happened like, I don't know, like 50 times or something, totally unnecessarily. And then on the other hand, this ending, the red probably happened like the equivalent of like 45, 47 times. And then finally it was correct like 2 or 3 times. And then they just move on to the next part. And this is if they actually have the sense to practice sections alone, as opposed to like going onward, you know, much, much further than this and having a much lower quality. And so the transitions between measures will be weak in this example. So in general, instead of letting that happen, we want to add from the end instead. And in this particular example, it would mean that if our goal is to play all the way through, and this is assuming that it's a good idea to do the entire one measure set. As a general rule of thumb, I think the upper limit for most smaller sets should be, and when I say a set, I just mean any section plus the following beat, right? One measure set would be one measure plus the following beat. Probably the upper limit is like 5 to 7 minutes or so. If it's taking you like 20, 30 minutes to do this, even with good strategy, it's too difficult right now. You should start with something smaller, such as a half measure set. or maybe like a quarter measure set, right? You should start with a smaller goal. But let's assume that a one measure set is actually a good idea in this hypothetical scenario. So if you don't get, like, pretty much I would just go right to the end. Sometimes I'd say, if you don't get this within like 3 tries, you don't get this within 10 seconds, go to the end. But really I would just go to the end. Like, if you know you're not going to get it, just go to the end. And you just have to decide, how much will I add in reverse? Maybe you can play just from here to here. Right hand, right? So instead of, again, going like, right? So if I don't add in reverse, it'd be like, right? And then start over again. Right? And I'm not even practicing like the end of the measure. But, you know, this way, if I play that blue part, maybe I'll be holding this note beforehand because it's tied over. Let's assume that's not too difficult for me. And then I can play from here to here. So maybe I'm holding this note first. Right. Let's assume in this example that it's fairly straightforward. Let's assume I can get that, and then maybe I add another quarter of a measure, and I play from over there. Okay. Right, and then if I can do that, then I will go all the way to the beginning of the measure and try from there, right? And so, obviously, if I can do the blue, it makes it much more likely I can do the green. If I can do the green, it makes it much more likely I can do the yellow. And it makes it much more likely I can do the purple, of course, right? I will just briefly mention here that if you don't get the whole thing, it's a very good idea to go back to the blue again. To basically add in reverse all over again. Right? So in general, when you're piecing together any kind of coordination, adding in reverse is going to be the default means of solving, of playing to a good quality, everything. Because music is biased towards the beginnings of things. We're biased towards the beginnings of every section that we practice. It could be as large as a page. It could be as small as like an eighth of a measure or something. Like you'll play from the beginning of that eighth of a measure over and over again, as opposed to doing the last 32nd, the last 16th, the last, little tiny minuscule grains of it, and then the whole thing, right? So instead of starting mindlessly from the beginning, we want to try to go to the ends to counteract that natural problem of playing the beginning and then messing up the end. Same thing for the left as well. If I were if I wanted to do from, whoops, that was the eraser. If I wanted to do from here all the way to over there, I'm probably going to start from the end of that. Right? So I'm probably going to play, like a lot of people will miss this, like this, and then maybe I want to go from here, and then maybe I'll go from over there. Right, so I can still see this. Maybe then I'll add in this note. Sorry. Yeah. And then we got that. And then maybe I'll play from over here. So, and if I messed up, I would go right back to that ending again. So that's what I would say there. Now, in combination with the other concepts, as you can see, like I ended up solving this right hand one measure set on its own, from star to star, ended up solving this left hand one measure set on its own, and then I would go on and continue along the same way. Maybe this next part, I can only play this part on the right hand. Maybe that's pretty difficult for me. So if that's the case, I might first play like, let's see, why is this camera going a little weird? Sorry, it seems to be a little bit wonky, but that's okay, we'll deal with it. So I might play just like the ending of that. Right? So that's like this very, very ending part here over here. Oh, there we go. That's back to normal. And then I might play from the 5-1 here. We got this like. add a note before that. And then maybe the whole thing. Once I got that, then I would mark this half measure set here. And maybe I'll do the same, if I want to play like from here to over here. Let's say I want to do this half measure set. I can start with this 3-2-3 at the end first. Right, this little part here. I can play just those 3 notes on their own. And then once I get that, then I can play from the chord before that. Like this one over here. And then that part afterwards. Right? So, and then if I got that, I would end up marking a half here. And I'm just moving on from these. If I then take some time and then come back later, I will know that, oh, I did a half measure set here, I did a half measure set over here, right? So that's kind of the rationale for that. So checking back over here, I gave some examples, of course, of separate hands just now. Fairly, again, you could do them slower if you want, but to quality. We did very small sections. We always have overlapping notes because of the methodology. Like I said, is a section plus the next note. All the fingering is written. We're moving on from things pretty much as soon as we play them correctly, and we'll come back later. We're keeping track using the logical notation that I showed you, and then also we're adding in reverse, right? So we're accounting, again, for all these layers and stacking them on top of each other. I'll be honest, like this is the first time I've taught the concepts in this way, and it's actually it's fun to kind of break it apart. It's actually kind of hard to not practice, like show you guys like all the different layers, like because there's so many more than 14 of them, honestly. But really, like nobody, including me, could understand all of them simultaneously. You have to layer them, like in terms of the learning as well too. Like it's like spinning plates, like you're spinning one thing and then okay, now I can spin the other thing, and then now I can add on a third one, a fourth one, or like juggling, right? Anyway, hope that makes sense. I'm going to unhighlight these things. If that was helpful, please like, subscribe, let people know about the channel, and feel free to ask me questions, follow up to any of this, and yeah, looking forward to the next one. That's kind of sunny.